Okay, we're starting. So, hello everyone, and welcome to our panel today in the scope of adaptation. So, as you can see, we have a diverse panelists here from different backgrounds as we talk about adaptation. We have thinkers, we have innovators, we have investors, and change makers having their real impact in a direct manner in the global south in general and Africa as well. So I will be starting with Genevieve. So Genevieve, you are the CEO of AgriLeisure. AgriLeisure, yes. So can you tell us about your work in Africa and how can blockchain and innovation make farming in Africa more fair and climate smart?
So, in terms of the work I'm doing in Africa, I've actually been working. I first started my work in Haiti, where I'm from, and I did a project where we looked at agricultural goods and getting them from the farmers to the market and creating a mechanism to track and trace this and creating fairer returns for them. So now we are we are currently looking at a project in Liberia. So if most people don't know, the Liberian conflict was caused because of the rice industry. And Liberia actually uses $300 million worth of rice every year. That's what they buy. So you can imagine the amount of rice that's being. Also, rice is a big contributor to carbon, to methane. So what we're going to be doing is looking with them on how to regrow the industry, everything from the growing, the storing, and the selling, but also looking at the climate smart in making sure that less water usage, biochar, and really looking at agriculture and data in agriculture to provide better ways of doing business. So in terms of the work in Africa, it's really first we need to educate them about the technology, that it is beyond the Bitcoin, what does it actually do, and then really creating mechanisms to have better access to market and also to financial services.
Thank you, Genevieve. So talking about agriculture, we move forward. So you are the founder and CEO of Green Earth Agro. So how can farmers and small businesses lead Africa's green transformation through regenerative and circular approaches? And just for the rush, he's a finance guy from Luxembourg, ex-finance guy, who likes calling himself now a farmer. So we want to have your point of view of a smart farmer.
I don't like calling myself a farmer. I'm a farmer. I think that's the catch. I wish I had the answer to the question how they could be a part of it, but it is an ongoing movement. So there are a lot of moving parts to the questions which you asked. There is not one cap which fits all. We need to work from bottom up. Not only technology, we need to also work on education. We need to ensure that, first of all, farmers understand what technology is. Second, we need to understand that they have electricity and internet. Third, once the technology is up and running, which there are a lot of technologies which are running, including the one from AgriLeisure, there needs to be a mechanism where that technology could be any technology, it's taught to the farmers. And last but not least, the most important, there should be finance, and you can have the best technology, you can have best education, but you need to have the money in the hand of a farmer, which I believe is not happening. So right now we are all sitting in COP. We are all trying to have a top-down approach. We need to have a bottom-up approach. I have been in Africa for a really long time, and I see intention is there. There is nothing, I'm not here to tell that we are not doing what we, but there is a gap between what we want to achieve and what we have been given as tools to fight. You cannot send someone with a war with a stick if the opposite party is fighting with a gun. So then they need to be equipped. So to your answer, to your question, I would answer in a very simple way. As you have this diverse panel, we need every part of it to come together and work. It's not only me working with farmers or she doing agriculture or you working uh, different things. We need all to come together and then the farm and equip farmers to do the transition.
Thank you, Rush, for reminding us that we need to go to the ground, that education is the first step we need to have, and teach people what is the technology that can help them to adapt and create this transition. Talking about that, let's move to a more technical side about AI and innovation. So we have with us here Søren. Thank you for joining us. So you are from DG Klima from the European Commission and previously deputy head of digital transformation cluster in the GIZ. And I know you've been working a lot on projects in Africa. So you've said in a previous talk that digital and sustainability program must not work in parallel, but together. From your experience, how can AI become not just a tool, but a moral compass guiding us toward more and just sustainable climate-smart solutions?
Thank you. So I'm really glad to be here. Thank you for inviting me. So it's always a pleasure. So I think as the European Commission, we work very closely with our partners in Africa on several Team Europe programs and also with our different partners within the EU. So, but the first thing I want to make AI is all about data. So without data, no AI. Everybody focuses on AI, but what is really critical are the underlying data and the quality of the data and the conversion of technology. So, so AI is not the panacea, everybody thinks. And we had like meetings, I had meetings with many countries, also extremely poor countries. Many policymakers want to leapfrog. So, you know, you're a very poor country like Chad or Kenya, and then suddenly you say, oh, we have the AI revolution and we can just jump ahead. And this leapfrogging. We had this so before when we talked a lot about the digital divide. So the same topic. So so there are 4 or 5 factors I think which have to be in place. So the first is to have actually an AI strategy. Like we also the GIZ also support from the Team Europe programs jointly with partners has developed in Kenya, in South Africa, supported the government to develop a comprehensive process. It's also very important, very inclusive with all stakeholders from civil society, private sector, government, to define what the country would like to achieve with AI. So I think that's the first. And then also within that strategy, also to address really difficult or challenging topics of data sovereignty because a lot of countries are very concerned about the data and the global tech companies. You know, AI could be the no natural resource curse, could be, because it could extract all the data, and then where do you have the benefits? So, you know, if you ChatGPT, I mean, maybe put this way. There's also, this is a danger, but I've never ever seen in the last, AI is the technology which has the quickest diffusion of any technology. I mean, within, I think, 3 months, we reached ChatGPT, for instance, or other AI tools, which like 150 million people within like days almost. So this has never been the case, not with telephone, not with internet. So it's not with any other technology before. But then I have 3 more points. So the second is, so the first is strategy. The second is very important, the capacity, AI, digital like literacy. So really to enhance the capabilities of people to understand the benefits and also its risks. That's really essential for the AI to have a positive impact. And the third, I would say, is the local adoption or appropriation of the technology by government, to give it, make it like shape AI in such a way that it serves people and the planet. So it's easier said than done, but concretely, what I mean, like if a Ministry of Environment in Rwanda or in Kenya or Senegal wants to use AI, well, what is really critical to first think through, what is it? AI can be used for instance, tracking and tracing the NDCs data, but basically clearly first define the objectives. What would you like to achieve with AI, and not blindfoldedly go into AI and technology driven. Tech is the solution. But first, what is the problem? What are we actually wanting to achieve with it? And then go step by step to using it. And then it can be a very powerful tool. So, thank you.
Thank you, Soren, for highlighting a very important point that we do have a problem, which is, especially when we talk about the global south and Africa, which is a lack of data. And if we want to solve those problems, we need to figure out a solution. As now we are in the new age where the data is the new natural resource, and as any resource, it all depends on how we will use it. So talking about this and the transparency of access to data and all of that, so we move to David. I know that you like this kind of topics, right? So David, now you are founder of Game Forests, and your work uses AI and decentralized data to reward local communities for protecting nature. So my question to you is, how can AI help local people not just to protect biodiversity, but also thrive from their...
First of all, I want to say thank you for that diverse panel. It's always a refreshing breath to sit in a panel that is so colorful. One of the things about the reality of data collection, I just want to give you numbers because Søren mentioned the data gap and inequality that we have. But for example, in biodiversity, the collection of natural data points, like for example, a tree that was observed by Alexander von Humboldt many centuries ago until now, we actually store them all in one single scientific database. And you can look up where all the data points are and how much data do you think from the scientific world has been collected in Europe and North America compared to the rest from this one database that collects data about the natural world. Truth is, it's 83% of all data ever collected on biodiversity is just from Europe and North America, leaving only 17% to the rest of the world. In fact, the Amazon rainforest, the world's most biodiverse place, has only 0.5% of representative data in the scientific database. I'm an AI researcher. I spent 6 years of my life doing a PhD in AI, and we have a saying, garbage in, garbage out. So basically, when you train an AI model with such biased data sets, you create biased models, and I actually published several papers back in my days where I just showed low-hanging fruits, like, okay, we collect some data in the Philippines. Oh, suddenly that algorithm is really bad because that algorithm doesn't perform really well in the Philippines, but performs really, really well in like Europe or North America. So how can we use that for carbon credit estimation? It's horrible. Clear solution, we collect more data. We need to especially collect data where the natural nature stewards are located. And we need to empower them to collect that data. And we hopefully want to do this not in a top-down approach, but a bottom-up approach. So what Gainforest does, we developed a decentralized infrastructure, and with that we actually won the X-Prize Rainforest last year here in Brazil. Is we empower local indigenous communities to collect data through an AI system called Taina. So Taina tells you, collect some of these bioacoustic data here, collect the tree image here. Then they store this data in a local storage server, a Mac Mini, that we buy them and store them in one of these indigenous communities that's usually connected to a Starlink, and we have several of them all around the world. In fact, we're working with 53 communities around the world that stores this data locally, and then this data is connected through a decentralized network, not blockchain. It's a technology called Upproto that the decentralized Twitter called Blue Sky is built on top. And so the communities can decide if they want to share the data, if they want to connect their little server to everyone else, or if they don't want to share the data, so it's their own treasure box, or if they want to share a little bit of the data. Why would they want to do this? First, many communities, in fact, care a lot about preserving their local knowledge, right? Knowledge is getting more and more forgotten, especially as indigenous communities move into the cities and they lose their oral histories. So having a private data storage is really important for them to preserve cultural knowledge. Second, we pioneered this with a concept called eco-certs. One of the things that we see as a problematic in the current carbon financing space is carbon credits are top-down. It requires Vera to basically issue it on the registry. It requires to pay you South Pole $500,000 to even start a project. So all these grassroots communities cannot benefit from carbon credits. So what we do at Gainforest is, when you plant a tree, you can basically issue yourself, I just planted a tree, I'm impacted. So you issue a certificate that people can buy. But of course, no one's going to buy it because everyone can issue whatever, right? That's the trick that decentralized data storage now comes in. So you issue that impact certificate called an EcoCert. Now it's your duty to collect the data to prove your impact. We call it bottom-up MRV. And since the launch of this certificate in January this year, we have raised $35,000 to 50 communities around the world because it is clearly much more easy to access this than to register for a carbon credit.
So one of the things I want to cover is, we keep talking about data. I love what David is doing in terms of putting the local data. We need governments to understand the value of that data, to then be able to have the policy. So very much, as you talked about, it's that communication. And I'm starting something like that with the government of Lesotho. And then allowing them to, because I met one of the top people, and he was so proud to tell me he had AI at the highest point in the world. And I said, who's capturing your data? Who owns your data? You don't. So we need to get that to happen and then be able to have that sovereignty. So in many places in the global south, we need to also deal with the energy issue. If you don't have energy, you can't have data centers. If you can't have data center, you cannot have reliable data. So being able to maintain that is going to be key. And one of the things I want to cover is with technology, you don't need to teach people technology. You need to teach them why the technology is supporting them. So it's about having technology support human rather than the technology being in their lives.
Quick to plan this. I love that angle on data governance. In fact, what we do in Gainforce, we pioneered this currently for the last 1.5 years. It's called the Data Council. And it's a really cool idea. You have all these kind of decentralized communities. You let them vote a representative. For example, in Kenya, we have Jewel, who's voting and getting elected to represent this community. In the Amazon, we have Marina Mura from the Mura people, and they then are elected in front of the community to discuss data policies. So all this data is shared in this decentralized network. The Data Council meets every couple months to discuss this data should be used, this data cannot be shared, this data should be used for benefit sharing. And that's a really wonderful approach that I want to just share this idea of bringing kind of these local and indigenous council from the real world into the digital world and have them basically govern their data the way they govern their communities. I think has been working out really well for us. And I think this is an idea that science needs to approach more. Then the other idea, a lot of the data that we collect, in fact, Marie-Claire is here, shout out. We're working together with the Youth Negotiators Academy on an AI system called Poly. So when we collect the data from the local indigenous communities, they actually get fed right now in the system that is an AI system that supports negotiations here at COP30. And so this data, hopefully, as you said, really importantly, it needs to reach policymakers and decision makers because the insights are oftentimes forgotten during the way when it comes to really big decisions. So we hope that through a digital bridge, we can actually connect even the most marginalized and local communities into the top level decision making that is happening here at COP.
Thank you so much, David, for bringing this so important insight. We always talk about AI, but the question is, it's not should we use AI or not, but how can we use it and by whom? And we are nowadays as well, we need AI because it's part of the digital humanities. So it's part of our identities nowadays. And it's that meeting point between human creativity, ethics, and also digital innovation. So talking about digital innovation, we need to Shri, right? He's the senior partner of Climate Collective. So we would love to know more about what you do in your organization in India and how AI can help building the smart climate solutions and duplicate it in Africa. Thank you.
Hi. Okay. Thanks so much for having me on the panel. It was really interesting to hear about everybody's work here and wonderfully diverse panel. So thanks for that. A little bit about Climate Collective Foundation. We work with climate tech startups. So that's the core of what we do. We work with startups across the climate sphere. So, for example, from energy to mobility to agri-technologies to air pollution to circular economy, etc. About 1,400 climate tech startups in our portfolio. And what we really do is we look at ourselves as the ecosystem orchestrators. When we started off in 2016, climate tech word didn't really exist, right? Everybody was like, why climate tech? Just talk about impact and tech. Like, why specifically climate? But now it's starting to become more popular, more increasingly so, and we've really been instrumental in developing the entire ecosystem around it so that climate innovation thrives in a country like India and in the global south. So I really like your point on talking about how we need all ecosystem players to come together for any sort of technology to work, and AI is not very different. So now what we're doing in India, and I think that there are good learnings for the global south. In India and South Asia, we also do programs cross-border, which are India, Africa, etc., for climate tech businesses, because these markets are very interlinked and we want the markets to scale across cross-border. What we're doing for our entire portfolio now is really putting a data AI lens across the portfolio. So now what we're seeing is that a lot of the companies, one, that are software first companies, data AI first companies, these companies are scaling up, but what they require is an entire ecosystem of support. So what we need is investors understanding the technology and how it's scaling up. We need the government coming in with regulatory and governance support. We need better data for companies to work on. And as you rightly pointed out, that's also a major challenge. But we're seeing some companies that have scaled up and that have gotten commercial investments coming in into the company. So one is the digital first products. The second is where the hardware integration comes in, and a software layer in terms of data AI builds on the hardware businesses. So, for example, we're seeing a lot of this in the water sector, where we see digital twins being built up for increased water quality, helping aqua farmers, and so on. So, we're seeing a lot of these technology commercializing quicker. And I think when we implement these technologies and help these technologies grow and scale in a country like India or even Africa, which has its resource constraints, where we require models which need to be cost effective, need to scale quickly, it becomes a good prototype to replicate across the global south, right? So we're seeing that a lot of technologies are sandboxed very quickly in the data AI space and the climate tech space and their intersectionality, even climate risk scenario modeling and so on. So a large portion of our effort is building that layer right now and that capacity for many of our businesses that already existed in the climate tech space. The second point that I want to bring in is who's going to work in these companies, right? And we're seeing that jobs is a big challenge in the global south, not because the population is not trained in digital aspects. We have software engineers, we have engineers who are trained in data, we have AI experts, but they are not trained in the intersectionality between data, AI, and climate, right? So climate becomes a lens in which we need to bring in things from the game. We now have large-scale programs where we are training both women and youth, because we want women also to come in into the picture, getting trained in these technologies, becoming really leaders to lead the transformation, the AI transformation. And we also look at it from the lens of equity. So are we doing really training for people who already are trained, who are already in universities, who are already in the space? But what about the people who are not that data friendly, who are not AI friendly? And one is that on the farmers on the ground who need to understand the technology, etc. But what about the job seekers and the force that we need to get in, right? And all of us are facing that problem in the global south, that we need really skilled technical people coming in into the workforce, and they need to be diverse. They need to come from different areas, because the solutions that are being built, rightly as said by the other panelists as well, need to be bottom up. We can't have them as top down. They need to be bottom up. So we need the skilled workforce also at a very local contextual level, which is also the kind of programs that we run in the space.
Thank you so much for sharing the overview of the entrepreneurship ecosystem in India and how it's very powerful to have, and we should have equity to create these climates and AI solutions.
I heard what all the panelists have said. I just want to bring my 2 cents of being on the ground. First of all, I have to say I agree with each and everything which the panelists have to say. But I tell you the ground reality. Where I live, I have transitioned myself from Luxembourg, which is the richest country in the world, to go to Ghana, and I don't live in Accra. I live around 200 kilometers away from Accra. 60% of the time, I do not have electricity. 98% of people do not have internet. Forget internet, they don't even have a phone. How do we collect data? Every time, so I would say GIZ is one of my partners. I work with them. I work with GIZ to make biomass and biochar. They have given us technical assistance in non-digital business development. I have UNICEF, I partner with them. They have given me technical support for digital development. Now I have developed the tech. It's not a heavy tech, it's just an app which people can use. But there is no one who's wanting to download that app. I am going, and now to adopt that technology, I need a lot of money to go house to house. And the first question they said, okay, we'll use the technology, give me the mobile. Who will buy the mobile for them? Who's going to use a mobile data? People have to pay $40 a month. Their average salary is not $40. So we are so far away from, forget AI. Excel is not there. Excel is not there on the ground. And imagine that what happens is a lot of grants come from different agencies, but they give their money based on their KPIs. They don't give the money on what is required on the ground. Like, for example, for me to get people to use technology, we talk about all these bringing farmers and all. The first question when I say I am making a training, the first thing is, will I get Pepsi, bread, and you give me taxi money to come? Where is that money coming in? I cannot go to my investors and put bread money and Pepsi money in my cost. So we are really far away from deploying the technology because there has to be a place. So I am not government, but I need to set up a Starlink every 15 minutes. Who's going to pay for all of that? I do everything sustainably, but I sell my fruit in the local market. No one is giving me like you go to Europe and you buy bio food, people give you 10 times or 5 times or 3 times money for the bio food. In Europe, you make bio or not bio. In Africa, you make bio or you don't make bio. Cost sensitivity is very important. So I am adding to my cost without having any return. So there is a stark gap between what we want to achieve because the donors are giving money based on KPIs. They use buzzwords like women empowerment, youth empowerment, tech, but we are far from that. So just wanted to highlight that I agree with that, but it's not happening on the ground. Everyone wants to speak to this point.
Okay, just one very quick point.
So
I need a quick add-on to this. Just wanted to add that in the training program that we are doing in India, where it is for very low income students, taking them for data here. Seen in colleges when we did a survey, was that there are degrees being given in data and AI without them having enough time on the computer. So they don't have access to computers. They are learning everything in theory, writing papers, and they're getting a degree in data and AI. So that's the kind of skilled workforce that we're going to get. So there needs to be a lot more interventions in terms of assets, as you rightly said, access to assets, and actually on-ground practice, industry-relevant work.
thank you. Yes, I think what you just mentioned, like everybody used to talk about the digital divide. Now, we haven't seen anything. The AI divide will be much, I'm afraid, personally, my personal opinion, the AI divide will be much worse than the digital divide. Because AI, in a way, turbocharges you in terms of, it's a real accelerator if you know how to use it well. And then people will use it, have so much advantage towards people who are completely excluded from it. And we still have 2.6 billion people without any access to the internet. And then 50% of people in Africa who have internet access do not use it. Because as you said, it's too expensive, or they don't see the value, or they are, or the content is not, there's no local content, so why should I use it? And so I think, yeah, it's very important to have this digital inclusion agenda, AI inclusion, because this is to enable people. All what we talk here, only works if, like you said, local communities have access. But the other thing, I'm in a sense a little more hopeful because this concept of community-based use. So we always have this very Western idea, one computer, one cell phone, one user, or one computer. It's not true. Once you go into indigenous communities, local communities, they share like 5, 6, 10 people, one device or one access. And we saw that happen.
And so one of the things that I wanted to bring
Thank you so much for your insight.
with the project I did in Haiti, it's actually that we have an individual with one device going in and serving the community. What I think there is about AI that we're not really getting to now, we can translate it very quickly into local languages, so we can actually be able to communicate better. So there are advantages, but we also need to do the protection, and that's the part that worries me. Because, and when we talk about, so David, I already took David's number because I think that there are opportunities of really creating for these communities because there's value. So when we talk about the certificates, yes, the market doesn't exist right now, but the market is going to exist if you do the right, if you do the right things, and that is going to be key, and that's where we can bring them in technology. So as Rush said, there isn't all that internet, but who says you have to use a smartphone? You just need to be able to communicate. And that communication then allows you to have access to what you need.
Thank you for sharing different insights. I don't know if you want to add something, David. I just want to open the floor for questions. So it's very time.
Hello, my name is Paola. I live in here in Brazil. I'm president of Connect Paraguay. What is Connect Paraguay in Brazil? It's a non-profit association who's thinking about how we can improve the connectivity in the field. Because here in Brazil, the same problem. We need to take the connectivity for data, for AI, and I'd like to talk a little bit more about this and how, because we understand here in Brazil, this Starlink, okay, working, but how can I connect the field, the whole field? In Brazil, we are using for the tower, and each for the tower maybe can place 15,000 hectares. But I'd like to discuss this how, because I don't know, maybe they remember the guy telling, he said 50% of rural areas are connected in Africa. But I'd like to discuss a little bit more because in Brazil is the same problem. Nowadays, I know that 33% of the islands are connected, but Brazil is so huge like Africa. And I'd like to discuss a little bit more, maybe which policies we needed to create, not only in Brazil, but around the world to include AI and data for this project like redefine. Thank you.
I guess I'm not the policy guy, but I can do so. I cannot comment on the policy part of it, but I can talk about how individually or collectively people, I'm not saying that the resources are not there. There are resources which are fragmented. If we put our hearts and minds together, things are possible to do. If you wait for the policy to come and if you wait for the government to put towers everywhere, I think it's going to be too late. 1.5 will be gone. So what Zoe was saying, that there could be one guy with a phone who could go everywhere with our data. There could be SMS services which people can use. But still, using that also is a challenge. So I think that what we need to do is, like, there's a cliche. The cliche being that people don't need to know how internet works, but they can go online and they can use what they have to use. So my humble experience from last 8 years, people at the very bottom, what they're looking is when they go home, can they have food? So they're looking for immediate redemptions. So first we need to address their food insecurity and the housing issues by giving them immediate cash. It's a complicated topic, but we need to first start doing it. And once they start having money, it takes a while. And the second thing is, okay, then they realize that what's the next step. So there is enough fragmented technology which is there, where 1 or 2 or 3% persons with vision can come and aggregate everything and work for them and show them if you do this. So there is this thing about you doing yourself and showing an example. Okay, I have done it. If you do it, if you're making $10, you will make $12, $13. And if when people see it with their own eyes that there is money and then there is better future for them and their kids, they will deploy. That is my way of looking at it.
So one of the things that I'm actually going to advocate for is you all should go to the IMF meetings. I have been going to the spring and the annual meeting. There they're talking the money and they're talking the policies. And when it comes to data, there is 7 countries putting in money in the greater South to collect data. So we should be going in and influencing those. I got to meet the lady from the WTO. She said it is not bilateral trade, it's multilateral trade, which means in multilateral trade, it's the communities making the decision on how they're going to behave. So my whole thing is, as a former banker, I felt much more comfortable over there. And so as we know that there's less resources coming in from the global north, and where they are telling us, no, we're not going to pay for what we've done, my country included, we now need to use our own pressure to advocate for ourselves and make sure that our policymakers understand actually the value, because we, the global South, feed the global North. That's the reality. So if we're going to feed them, we're going to make them pay for it also. So it's a financial piece that we have to, and so we need to start looking at how can I be nice, but actually how I can get paid for my work.
Thank you so much. We'll be taking to one question.
Maybe for that, just also to take the answer to your question. 2 coins, quick. Mapiomas in Brazil is doing great work putting Starlinks, and Starlinks might not cover big coverage, but you can install like a relayer and it will expand the signal a little bit. So it will help a little bit with this. And the second quick note is do the storytelling, like when you're not connected, you don't have any digital capacity, then you cannot measure anything and there's no AI. So you have to start with connection. That's probably how you start.
Okay, thank you. My name is Daniela. I'm from Cancun, Mexico, and also a shaper. So it's great to see you, David, and Kenza. I'm very proud of you. But I work in government. I create public policy, and we are innovating with predictive models with machine learning to select the areas in the city that we need to invest. So I don't know if you have heard about different scenarios of this kind of use, because we need to approach more people with less money to make a great impact, a bigger impact. So that's why we are just analyzing that data to invest.
Thank you so much. Should we take the second question? So my name is Chen Shun, and I'm from China, but I'm studying in Germany. So I would like to ask today, we talk about a lot about the data collection, and all of you, some of you work for the data business. So I would like to ask, when I want to buy your data, how can we ensure the data quality? Because I would like to buy some high quality data, not the low quality data. And the second question is for the topic climate change. So what type of climate change, what type of data for the climate change is private? I mean, you should collect people by people. I mean,
It's not like the sky, it's more like the space. Um, Maybe some data in the climate change that um, well made some present. So what kind of personal data?
Thank you so much. We will answer those two questions and take your second. I think we have already.
Really, really cool questions. I want to big answers and shape of our for the data value, there's an algorithm called data variation. So when you usually have machine learning model you want to train and you don't know how much each data point contributes to, what you can do is you can calculate the Shapley value of each data point and will give you a fair value of this data in respect on how useful it was for your specific machine learning task. When you don't have any machine learning task and you don't even know what you want to use the data for, then it's really hard to evaluate the quality of the data. Then only eye to eye can work. So you ask for a data sample, and like, oh, okay, this looks good, then it's fine. So it's easier when you already have a machine learning or AI model with you to train. So data variation is the scientific discipline of this field. So really great question. Number two, privacy. There's another technology called CK, zero knowledge proofs. We talk a lot about privacy at Gainforce because after the X Prize, one of our communities that hosted the X Prize, Rainforest, was actually blocked because of the big fame, like, oh, in the Amazon, they have this big competition, $10 million. And once the military left, some people blocked the community, right? They wanted to see if there's money. So revealing the location of a place where you send funds is very dangerous. What we do, there's a new technology called zero knowledge proofs, CK, that you can prove only the things you want to prove and keep everything else secret. It's very new and it's very cool. It's actually innovated a lot by the Web3 and blockchain space. And so you can create a CK proof of your impact that only reveals, for example, how many numbers of trees you collected, but keep different kind of features, everything else secret. So that's the
Thank you so much. Someone want to answer that question?
So there was two questions. One was about data privacy. And this is why for me, I advocate in a way of blockchain technology, because then you can know where it comes in. Because one of the aspects of data being sold is now we're talking about this being a new source of income, but it is not paying the people who actually participated in the work. So being able to have equitable distribution is where blockchain technology comes in that you know who started it and where you need to send the money back technically. In terms of that's why it goes back to policymakers. They need to be able to recognize. So one of the work that was done in Haiti before we went in is the World Bank and the government work on digital identity, digital data recognition, and that then allows you to be able to shield. You know, I always say think of it like a marriage. You get married, you go and you register it at the with the government. But what happens every day? Who cooks? Who cleans? Nobody knows until there is a problem and you need to go into the house and see why is there a disturbance. And we should treat these things in the same way. The data about the person being married allows them to be able to have access to recognition once they have a child, to the name and those kind of things. So that's how we should be looking at that data and simplifying it as we explain to people what this is all about. And that then also we're not going to be able to take a lot of the data is going to come from the global south. We need to not have the neocolonialism that has happened with other resources happen with this one.
Thank you all for a great seminar. Really, I can say. Totally, I agree with Mr. Shari. Most village they have issue with to get benefit from AI models and AI. So I think the governments, like the Ghana government, and some of the government, they should, in public policy, they should find investor from banks somewhere. And I think this is the solution. to find investors. Otherwise, we'll stay for long term, for 30 years, nothing. But I like your optimism that getting investors is the most important thing. The optimism is there. So the problem is, and thankfully, not thankfully, whatever, I come from the finance background and investment background. Investors don't care too much about climate. They don't care too much about indigenous community. They want to beat the S&P. Setting up infrastructure is not going to give them the money back. You can go to someone and say, give me 10 euros for UNICEF, they will give that. Give me 1,000 euros for a foundation, they'll give that. Give me 50,000 euros, which they can tax deduct, give that. But you tell them 50,000 put in infrastructure, they will not do it. So I believe that this is a very difficult situation where this money for me cannot come from investors. It has to come from the government. There has to be better tax connections. There has to be better distribution. Because think of you as an investor. Why would you put money in someone else? Imagine you have your own house. You will not put a router and have a Claro connection from the next person's house. It's not the thing how it works. I have tried for 8 years. No one has given me money. If you have a better idea, I will try it that way. But no investor cares anything other than his return on investments. And maybe someone else has other things to say to this.
We're running out of time. Just to add something quickly for Daniela. So I work on cyber democracy. So I know there is a very good example of Mongolia. They're using some tools of the cyber democracy to include some citizens in a digital way to have for the participation, consultation for experts and everything. So we can discuss about it later. Thank you everyone for attending. It was a very nice discussion with a diverse background and very deep. I will give me just, I always like to end up my session with some positive vibes, let's say. So I would ask you for one last sentence. What's your hope when you think about the future of Africa?
I only say one thing. If there is no solution, it is not a problem.
I hope that there's equitable AI transformation that improves youth and bring them together.
I know it's going to be positive because Africa is the next place where things are going to happen. So it's just giving them the resources and the tool and the recognition that it is going to be the place. Obviously, it's also going to be Brazil, but there you're talking about 2.5 million people. We're going to have to feed and keep them busy.
A famous statistician once held a workshop in Africa and said, also with hope, so in 10 years, I hope that I visit your country and I see like the bright future. And then after that workshop, an African woman came to him and said, you got it wrong. It should be in 10 years, I visit your country to see how great you got.
Thank you so much, all of you. We can see here that we have the power of collaboration to create a lot of incredible things. So yeah, the future of Africa is here thanks to your innovation, investment, and we don't have to give up, right, Trash? All right, thank you so much all for attending and participating in our panel. And let's take a picture before we go. Thank you. And thank you, Miro, for all the assistance.